Hello, friends. Hello, and welcome to today's Flipgrid live event. I'm Anne with Team Flipgrid, and today we are celebrating environmental science in partnership with New York City Department of Education and the Genovesi Environmental Study Center. Before we get started, let me just say this. If you don't know what Flipgrid is, we're a free video communication platform from Microsoft, and we are on a mission to empower every person on the planet to share their voice and respect the diverse voices of others. That's why we are so excited about today's event. Sarah and Erica from the Genovesi team will teach us about physical, behavioral, and chemical adaptations, and we're going to meet some of the amazing species that live at the center. So if you're ready, let's go ahead and toss it over to Sarah and Erica and get started. Welcome! Why don't you go ahead and unmute, and then we'll get the screen shifted over and get started. We're so excited to learn with you today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Anne, for that introduction. Welcome.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to double check on that mic. Let's go ahead and try it again, ladies. I want to make sure everybody can hear you.
How's that?
Awesome. We're ready.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. It's so great to be here. My name's Sarah. This is Erica.
Nice
We're
to meet
from
you.
the Genovesi Environmental Study Center in Brooklyn, New York. And we're happy to be here with you today. I see that we have students all the way from Tunisia, Alberta, Canada, Bloomington, California. Welcome to everybody. We can't wait to learn with you today. We are going to be learning all about weapons of the wild. We'll be learning about animals and plants and their adaptations and how they use them to survive. So without further ado, just so you guys know, if you have questions throughout the presentation, you can use the chat, the Q&A chat on the right-hand side of your screen. And Miss Erica and I are going to be having a conversation about these adaptations, and she's going to be asking me some questions. So I want you to think about those while the presentation goes on.
Excellent. So to start, our presentation today is called Weapons of the Wild. And so Sarah, thinking about that title, Weapons of the Wild, what would you predict it is that we're learning about?
I think we are probably going to learn about organisms like animals and plants and how they might have defense mechanisms on their body or things that they do that might help them survive and reproduce in the wild.
That's great. So I want all of our viewers to think about that. And I want to say that that is what we'll be learning about. So when we talk about weapons of the wild, what we're really learning about today are adaptations. And an adaptation is anything that helps a living thing to survive and or to reproduce in the place where it lives. And we call the place where something lives, right? And instead of saying the wild, we're going to call it its habitat. Now, adaptations can focus on survival. They can also focus on reproduction. But today we're going to focus on survival. And more specifically, we're going to focus on ways that plants or animals protect or defend themselves, right? And sometimes ways that predators catch their prey. Today, we're going to focus on 3 different kinds of adaptations. We're going to start with physical adaptations. Then we're going to talk about behavioral adaptations. And then finally, we're going to talk about a special kind of physical adaptation called a chemical adaptation. And we're really excited to share some of the living things from our collection as we do that. One thing I want all of you to think about as we present different living things is think about the habitat they live in, because adaptation is an interaction between that living thing and the place where it lives or its habitat. So let's zoom in. So to start, we're going to take a look at a plant that lives in the desert. This is a plant called agave. Now, of course, The desert is a place where there's not a lot of water available. That's the definition of a desert, right? And so an agave plant has to be very good at rapidly absorbing water when rain is available. And then it stores that water in its leaves. So you'll see that the leaves are very thick and fleshy. They have a covering that protects them from drying out. Now, because this agave plant is filled with water, animals that live in the desert would very much like to eat it because it's not just a source of food energy, it's a source of water. So I'm going to ask all our viewers to think about the question that I'm about to ask Sarah, which is looking at this, observing this plant, how do you think this plant is able to protect itself from the animals that would like to eat it? Because remember, it's a plant. It can only grow in one place. It can't run away.
Oh, I'm thinking that those spines that it has, those spikes, they look pretty sharp. If I were an animal, I wouldn't want to bite into that. It would probably hurt me.
I agree. So if we take a look at the tip of the leaves, you can see that there's spines, right? And they're very sharp. I am not going to touch them. I'm just kind of pointing them to them so that you can see what they look like. Now, as Sarah said, most animals are not going to want to bite into something that will hurt the inside of their mouth. And so these spines protect the plant from being eaten. You can also see that there are spines or thorns along the edges of the leaves. These are an example of what we call a physical adaptation. So a physical adaptation is any structure or body part that a living thing has, or a characteristic of that living thing's body that helps it to survive, right? So in this case, those spines are a physical adaptation. So we're going to switch habitats and we're going to switch living things. And instead of looking at this desert plant, we're going to introduce you to a ball python. A ball python is a reptile, more specifically a snake, from Central Africa. This is our ball python, Ricky. We're going to give Ricky a moment to get accustomed to being held in front of the camera. Now, Ricky's natural habitat might be in a grassland, savanna, or forest. And typically, ball pythons can be found on the ground. They're not really arboreal snakes. They're very, very heavy. And so they tend to live on the ground. And of course, we know on the ground, right, there can be lots of different dead leaves, right, in these habitats. So before we get an up-close view, just taking a look at Ricky, I want you to think about what physical adaptations, what body parts or what characteristics might help him to avoid predators or to catch prey in his natural habitat. Sarah, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking since you said he likes the forest floor and he's brown, maybe he camouflages with the forest floor or blends in.
Nice. So as you can see, Ricky's scales, the colors and the patterns of his scales look very much like the dead leaves on the forest floor. And so the colors and patterns will really help this snake to blend in its natural habitat. So it's hard for predators to see. In addition, so it's hard for his prey to detect him, right? So that's one way that this snake has a physical adaptation for his habitat. Now that he's getting a little more comfortable, we're going to try and take a closer look at his face. So you might be able to notice that if we look above his mouth, right, you can see some small holes. They might look orange or a little bit pink to you. If I turn him, so he's looking right at the camera, you can probably see them across the bridge of his nose right, and along the other side of his mouth. So these little holes or pits are called heat pits. And this is a physical adaptation. It's a structure that helps him detect his prey. So as a snake, this is a cold-blooded animal. That doesn't mean his blood is cold. It just means his body temperature is the same as the place where he lives. But he'll eat many warm-blooded animals, for example, rodents. And these heat pits actually let him sense their heat, right? We can't do that. We have a sense of sight, a sense of smell, but he can actually use those heat pits to detect body heat from his prey. Are there any other adaptations that you think this snake might have to help him catch his prey?
Well, I saw his tongue coming in and out. What's he doing with his tongue?
So snakes often stick their tongue in and out. This helps them to sense their environment. And if he does that for us in front of the camera, you might notice that his tongue is what we call forked. That means the tip of his tongue has two separate parts that he flicks in the air. And then inside his mouth, on the roof of his mouth, he has an organ called the Jacobson's organ. There are two holes that he puts the two sides of his tongue into. And that helps him, gives him information about where food is. It's somewhere in between our sense of taste and our sense of smell. And the fact that he has two holes and two sides of his tongue lets him know where he should go right or left to find his prey. So together with the heat pits, his tongue is helping him to find prey in his environment. So like the spines on the agave, that's an example of a physical adaptation. So let's recap and think about what a physical adaptation is. So Sarah, what have you learned about physical adaptations?
Okay, so I think we talked a lot about how it's either a structure or a body part on a plant or an animal that helps it defend itself from predators. And I remember examples of the agave's spines and the ball python's camouflage, Jacobson's organ, it's a hard one to say, and his sensing with his tongue.
Fantastic. So a physical adaptation can be a structure or even just a characteristic like coloring or pattern. So now that you mentioned camouflage, I'd like to introduce you to another animal that lives here at the center. It's an animal called a walking stick. Walking sticks live right here in New York State. You can find them in deciduous forests up in the tree canopy. So I'm going to go get my walking stick and we're going to zoom in to see what we can notice. So this is a walking stick insect. As we just shared, walking sticks can be found in the canopy of a tree. And what that means is it's found in the part of the tree where the branches and the leaves are. So taking a look at this animal and observing it, what are some ways you think it might protect itself from predators? Because insects are a very common prey animal. There are many animals that would like to eat this insect.
Well, since you said in the tree, it really looks like a branch to me. So I'm gonna say it camouflages with the branches of the trees.
Yeah, so it does, right? We can see that the color, walking sticks like this one are typically brown or sometimes green, and the color really helps them to blend in or camouflage with their habitat, so it's very hard to see them. But I'd like to add on, there's something a little more happening here. In addition to being able to blend in, this animal really looks like the branches where it lives. It copies or mimics those branches. And that's an adaptation called mimicry. Mimicry is when one living thing looks like something else. And by looking like something else, it gets an advantage that helps it to survive, right? So we can see how the markings on this walking stick, the little bumps on its legs and its thorax, help it really look like the branches where it lives. Right? And that's called mimicry. But there's something else going on here. Right? It's not just how it looks, it's actually how it behaves. You may notice that this animal is holding some of its legs out at funny angles, right? And that's so it will look less like an insect and more like a branch. You'll also notice it stays very, very still. Those are examples of what we call a behavioral adaptation. A behavioral adaptation is something that a plant or animal does that helps it to survive. Walking sticks, right? They live in trees, and trees don't move on their own. They move when the wind blows. And when the wind blows, a walking stick will sway its body back and forth to look like a branch blowing in the wind. It will hold its legs at different angles to look more like a branch. And if a predator attacks it, it will fall down to the forest floor like a twig, and it will stay still on the forest floor until it's dark out. and then at night it will climb back up into the treetop. These are all examples of behavioral adaptations. And I hope we're getting the big idea that no living thing has one adaptation to survive, it has many, right? It's a combination of both physical and behavioral adaptations that help this animal to survive. So now that we've thought a little bit about behavioral adaptations, I'm going to put our walking stick away and let's recap together. So Sarah, what would you say a behavioral adaptation is?
Okay, so we talked about how animals or plants have to do something for it to be a behavioral adaptation. I'm thinking of the example you said of the walking stick using mimicry to really act like the tree branch, or then a stick if the wind blows and it falls. So it's something that an animal or plant does, an action or a behavior in order to survive.
Excellent. So now, that being said, we're going to look at one more animal. We're going to take a look at a fire-bellied toad. Fire-bellied toads live on and around ponds. And as we take a look at our fire-bellied toad, let's think about what physical and behavioral adaptations it might have for survival and see what else we can notice. I'm going to go get our toad and we'll zoom in. So here we have a fire-bellied toad. And this toad is quite easy for us to see right now because we have it in a container, right, on a counter. But taking a look at this toad and thinking about where it lives in and around ponds, how do you think it might protect itself from predators that would like to eat it?
I'm thinking that it looks a lot like a pond with algae in it. It's green. Maybe a physical adaptation is that it camouflages, and then it's also pretty jumpy. So I would say that it's fast. Maybe that's a behavioral adaptation.
Great. So I agree. We take a look at its back. It's bumpy. It's green with black spots. And in its natural habitat, it would make it very hard to see. Now, animals that have rely on camouflage often have to stay still in order for camouflage to work. And if they start moving around, it's easy for predators to detect them. So actually, this toad has a really fascinating behavioral adaptation. If it's threatened by a predator, it will flip over and puff up its belly. So I'm going to change our camera angle so we can take a closer look at this toad's belly. What are you noticing makes the belly different from the back?
Wow, it's really brightly colored. It's orange.
Ah, just orange?
Well, you're right. It's also black, orange and black.
Yeah. So in nature, these colors have a very special meaning. In nature, orange and black, red and black, and yellow and black are what we call warning colors. They warn other animals, stop, stay away, don't bother me. And the reason they're warning is because they are toxic or can hurt you in some way. So if we think, for example, of black and yellow bees, right, we know not to catch them because they can sting. Those colors naturally tell us to stay away. This toad is actually toxic, right? And that is a chemical adaptation. So chemical adaptations are when a plant or animal makes a toxin. And a toxin is a chemical that doesn't hurt the plant or animal that makes it, but it can hurt or even kill other living things. So it does not hurt me to touch this toad, but if a predator like a bird or snake were to eat it, that bird or snake would get very, very sick. Now, if a bird eats this toad and then the bird gets sick, does that help the toad survive? Of course not, right? The toad would get digested in the belly of the bird, right? But it's these colors that warn the bird, leave me alone, don't hurt me. So let's recap. So based on what we've talked about today, what do you think a chemical adaptation is?
Okay, I think it's any sort of toxin like poison or venom that an animal or plant uses to help defend itself to survive. You were speaking about the fire-bellied toad's toxin.
Fantastic. And I would add on that sometimes we call toxins poisons And we call them poisons when they hurt an animal that touches them or eats them. And sometimes we call a toxin a venom, and it's a venom when it's injected. For example, when a snake injects a venom directly into its prey.
To know, that's a fun fact.
So now that we've learned a little bit more about some of the physical, behavioral, and chemical adaptations that living things have to protect themselves, we are going to open up to some of your questions. And I'm also going to introduce you to our leopard gecko.
For our selfie. So Anne, we're going to kick it back to you. Thank you.
Awesome. Oh my gosh, it was so incredible getting to meet some of your animals and learn more about the adaptations that they have. So we're getting really great questions that are coming into folks. Remember to use that Q&A chat feature, and you can add your questions for Sarah and Erica. But as they mentioned, let's take a selfie together. Friends who are watching, this is your chance to get set up. If you need to step in front of your screen or get up from your chairs and move, go ahead and do that now. And while you're moving, I'm going to give you a reminder that we would love to see your selfies shared on social. We love celebrating the incredible learning during these live events with you. So be sure to tag at Flipgrid and of course, tag our friends at the Genovesi Environmental Science Center, and you can find them using at NYC_GESC. We would love to see these. So everybody, time to say adaptations. Oh, I see those smiles. Keep them going. You have an animal in there too. Maybe we'll hear a tiny bit about that in just a moment. Friends, get those selfies in. So cool. That was so awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Sarah and Erica, that was so fun to see. Now, folks, remember, be sure to tag at NYC_GESC and tag at Flipgrid too. Now, Sarah and Erica, do you want to tell us a little bit about the friend we have there?
Okay, to take a closer look.
Oh, so cool.
So this is our friend Louise. Louise is a leopard gecko. Her natural habitat would be in a desert. Right, and so now that you've learned a little bit about adaptations, you might notice how her colors and her patterns would really help her to camouflage or blend in with the sand and gravel in the desert. Right, so that would be an example of one of her physical adaptations. But she also has a super cool behavioral adaptation. If she's threatened by a predator, she has little muscles in the base of her tail right about here. And she can squeeze those muscles and actually make her tail fall right off. And that sounds pretty strange, right? But if her life is in danger and she makes her tail drop off, that really startles the predator who's attacking her. And as the predator startles or gets surprised, they might stop attacking her and give her time to run away to a safe place. That's a really special adaptation called autotomy. There's not very many animals that can make part of their body fall off. And what's even more amazing, that happened to her when she was younger, but look, she has a tail. So what does that tell you? It tells you it grew back. And that's an adaptation called regeneration. She can actually grow back that tail as long as she has enough access to food, water, and rest. So pretty incredible and special physical combination of physical and behavioral adaptations there. All right, back to you, Anne.
Oh my gosh, incredible indeed. And it was really great to get to meet that animal up close. Now, I want to shout out to Alden, who is watching. We have a viewer saying they love learning about animals and they're so excited for this event. So Alden, thank you. And Mrs. Montejano's class is curious, how do animals change colors as one of their adaptations?
That is a very interesting question, and it's going to change from animal to animal. Some kinds of animals change color over the course of their life. So you might have noticed today when we looked at the walking stick that the walking stick was mostly brown. But when it originally hatched from an egg, when it was what we call a nymph, it might have been green. And as they go through their life, they change color every time they molt or shed their exoskeleton. There are certain snakes that also change color through their life. Other animals like chameleons are able to change color like that, right? And those are often animals that have scales. Scales are found on reptiles, and they are in layers of the skin. And so the top of layer might be clear, but the very bottom layer has something called chromatophores, and those are special structures where pigments can brush in and out or be revealed or held back. And so for many animals that change color very quickly, it's the use of the chromatophores in the base layer of their skin, right? That's a pretty big answer, but it gives you an idea of how incredible adaptations can be.
Yeah, incredible indeed. It's awesome hearing you explain that a little bit more in depth. Now, Sarah and Erica, we are getting a lot of questions about animal adaptations. And this is great because today we're actually featuring a Flipgrid collection of a lot of your topics to help folks reflect and learn more about physical, behavioral, and chemical adaptations. And folks, in just a moment, we're going to show you how easy it is to find those topics. But Sarah and Erica, before we do, can you let educators know what to expect when they use your topics inside the Flipgrid Discovery Library?
Yeah, of course. So we have curated collections. The one you're going to view is related to our topic today, Weapons of the Wild, all about adaptations, physical, behavioral, and chemical adaptations, as well as one on amphibians called Amazing Amphibians, Riveting Reptiles, and Incredible Insects. So we really hope that you'll check it out. We have all sorts of fine-tuned topics within those larger collection categories.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, folks, let me show you how easy it is to find this collection so that your students can reflect on all they have learned. It's as easy as launching your browser and typing in aka.ms/wild. And this will take you directly to this featured collection called Weapons of the Wild. You see several topics and you can choose one of them to share it with your students and have them reflect. This one shows, wow, that venom and poison, weapons of the wild adaptation. Now, you also notice that small blue button that says add topic. You can choose to add this topic to a group, create a new group, or save it for later. Remember to think of a group as your classroom. And here is what your students will see as they begin to reflect on that topic and submit their own responses to share their learning. And remember, they can have fun using all those creative effects and expressions inside the Flipgrid camera. If you haven't seen them yet, be sure to check it out. And remember, folks, you can use this topic immediately or any of these topics right away inside your classroom. We're going to go ahead and post that link in the chat for all of you to be able to use, copy and paste right away. So Sarah and Erica, let's get back to some more of those questions. Mr. Jackson's class is watching and they've had a lot of really great questions, but one of them is all about how plants survive in extreme weather, maybe a harsh winter or a desert. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Believe it or not, there are some plants that need to have extreme weather in order to reproduce. We focus today on adaptations for survival, but there are some kinds of trees, for example, that their seeds will not germinate unless they've survived through a forest fire, right? There's other kinds of seeds that will only germinate or begin to grow after they've been extremely cold, right? And so they have to go through what we call cold stratification, right? There are other plants that are maybe not adapted to survive extreme weather events like hurricanes, but might be adapted to survive constant strong winds. And those are often plants like certain kinds of pines that are going to grow very, very slowly. So there's kind of a whole host of different adaptations that plants can use for extreme weather.
Glad we got a plant question. Thank you.
We always love plant questions.
Well, this one is now switching to animals, and a lot of folks are curious, of all the animals in the center, which one has the most unique adaptations?
Oh, really good question. That's a really good question. We liked sharing the fire-bellied toad with you. I don't know that it's necessarily the most unique adaptation, but the fact that it shows us so many adaptations that all come into play, that we can look at one organism and see examples of both physical, behavioral, and chemical adaptations. I also really think that for our leopard gecko and our starfish, that ability to lose a body part and grow it back is pretty incredible. And I don't know about you, Sarah, but that makes me think of our axolotls.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. Do you want to share about axolotls?
So axolotls are so fascinating because they're one of the only amphibians that lives fully underwater. They actually don't go on land, and they have these external gills that help them breathe in the water.
And they're really amazing because while a lizard might be able to regenerate its tail, or a starfish can regenerate an arm, an axolotl apparently can regenerate almost any part of its body. And because of that ability, scientists are really interested in them, because imagine if we could better understand that adaptation, how we might be able to help humans who might suffer from an accident, right? And maybe we could apply the adaptation that axolotls have to help humans heal. So they're pretty fascinating. That was a great question.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I know I enjoyed hearing your responses. Now, this is another great question that folks are curious. What are some tips that you would share for us to do in our own neighborhoods when we notice animals or insects? Should we touch them? Should we leave them alone? What are your best tips?
So I think always observing without touching is the best. Many amphibians, for example, have very fragile skin because they use their skin to breathe. And if you don't know an animal, you should never touch it, right? Because you don't want to get hurt if the animal's trying to defend itself. But also some animals, if we touch them, we can hurt that animal. So I would say observation without touching, and then mostly learning, right? If you observe an animal, do as much research as you can, learn as much as you can about it, and that will help you understand what you can provide for them in your habitat, or what you should make sure is not in your habitat, right? So like in my backyard, I see a lot of bees, so I make sure to provide flowers for them to visit so that they have the nectar and pollen they need to eat, but I never use chemicals in my backyard because I wouldn't want to hurt them. I don't know, Sarah, is there anything else you would add?
I think that's an excellent answer.
Oh, it was an excellent answer. Thank you for sharing those insights. Now we have one more question, and I think a lot of us are curious. How did you get into this role? What made you choose this job or area of study for your career?
That's such a fun question. Thank you so much. Eric and I are both teachers. We have been for many years, and science is our passion. We love educating students all about science, the environment, and our goal is really to have students be stewards of the environment. So we are here at the Genovesi Environmental Study Center doing that every day.
And for those of you at home who are interested in a career like that, right? In order to become teachers after high school, we had to go to college. We got what's called an undergraduate degree. In my case, mine is in biology.
So is mine, biology as well.
And then after that, we had to go to something called graduate school. That's where we got something called master's degrees. And that gave us the ability to become certified teachers here in New York State, right? So in addition to all of our passions and interests that brought us here, that was kind of like our track to this career.
That's so cool. Thank you both for sharing that. Sarah and Erica, I really just want to say thank you for helping us all better understand animals and their adaptations. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with the folks who are watching?
We just want to thank you so much for joining us today. It's been truly a pleasure to get to be with you, to show you the animals and plants that live here at the center. And we hope that you will continue to be stewards of the environment. And we wish you all the best.
Oh my goodness, thank you. It has been so special spending this time with you, Sarah and Erica, and the entire Genovesi Environmental Science Center team. Thank you, thank you, thank you for teaching us and learning with us today. Now, friends listening in, guess what? We have Flipgrid live events every week, and we have an incredible lineup that we'd love for you to join us and continue the learning together. You can head to aka.ms/Flipgrid live events for more information and to register for upcoming events. Don't forget to check out the incredible collection and topics that the Genovesi Environmental Study Center is sharing on their Discovery Library page. Friends, thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for joining in this live event and learning and exploring together today. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll see you next time. Bye.